my first commit to the Visual Studio code base.
Wow.
Yeah, I printed that out. We got like a commit report or whatever. And this is the first time I broke the build. I have those framed.
Are you a developer that is excited about what's next in Visual Studio? Then you want to hear this. Hi, I'm Roberto Perez. I'm a senior global solutions architect at Redis, specializing in Azure Managed Redis. And today I'm speaking with Matt. Welcome, everyone. I'm here with Matt as a principal project manager at Microsoft. We're going to talk about the upcoming release of Visual Studio with you guys. We are very excited of these new features that are coming out. At least personally, for me, is a great impact that have gone Visual Studio have done to me over the past, I would say, 20 years and more. Right now, I just want to, Matt, if you can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah. Hey, Roberto, thank you for having me on your show. I'm Mats Christensen. I work at Microsoft on the Visual Studio team, and I've done that for about 15 years. Before that, I worked in various startups and other companies as a developer using VB and C# using Visual Studio as well. And so I've used Visual Studio for 25 years, and going strong and loving it.
Awesome. I think, we have a similar, I would say, amount of years interacting with Visual Studio and using it in our careers. So that is awesome. How do you get, coming back to the story of how did you get involved? I will share mine later on, but can you speak a little bit about that? How did you get involved initially with Visual Studio, even at Microsoft, or even before you get into Microsoft?
Well, it was, I started writing websites using ASP Classic back in like the late 90s. And, this .NET thing was started to come out. And all of a sudden, when I searched online for help with ASP, I would see this .NET stuff. So ASP.NET. And it was really annoying because there was I couldn't use the answers for ASP.NET in my ASP questions.
Yes.
So it became pretty clear this ASP.NET thing that was the bigger thing all of a sudden, and that took over. So I'm like, okay, I gotta go that way. So I learned that, and then you quickly figure out that hey, Visual Studio is the premier place to be. So I started out with like Macromedia home site, and then Dreamweaver, which actually had web form support back then, ASPX support. But was thinking, no, I need to go to Visual Studio. So Visual Studio was actually the very first software that I bought with real money. And I think I got the academic version, which existed back then, which was pretty cheap. And so that was fine. So that was my beginning with Visual Studio. I actually dabbled in the previous Visual Studio, like Visual Studio 97.
Okay.
For like some VB stuff. But I don't really count that because I wasn't using it, on the dailies or whatever.
Awesome.
So that's how it happened. And then, I fell in love with that and doing VB at the time, VB.NET. And I got a job at some point. I got hired to do VB.NET development. And by the time my start date came around, they had decided in the meantime to make the switch to C# because I was the only candidate they got for that job interview that had any VB.NET knowledge. So
wow.
They could kind of see the direction that would take. And that was C# for me. And I never looked back and loved it ever since. And I started writing open source. I wrote blogengine.net, which was kind of it became, I think, the biggest blogging platform on .NET, like kind of WordPress, but for .NET. And that gave me the MVP. I became an MVP with Microsoft. And through that, I met some people at the MVP Summit, some Microsofties, and they ended up wanting to hire me. And so that's how I got into Microsoft. And I know that's actually the way a lot of people get into Microsoft. So that's a good path for it. But it was really a fantastic experience because I'd used Visual Studio for building web and ASP.NET and JavaScript for years, for 10 years. And then I got hired by Microsoft to build the web tooling in Visual Studio. So nice. I could build it for myself. I was my own customer, right? This was absolutely a dream come true. And so I did that for 7-8 years or something like that.
Wow.
And so in the meantime, I started writing extensions to, as a creative outlet and to help me figure out what features to build and so on. And so I took a big interest in the extension and extensibility story of Visual Studio. So after I kind of have done the web for a long time, I decided to move over to work on extensibility of Visual Studio.
Okay.
And so at that point, I moved from the .NET team, which actually .NET team actually owns the web tooling in Visual Studio.
Okay.
And so I moved from .NET into the Visual Studio core team, and I've been there ever since. And so, yeah, here we are.
Nice, nice. So when you moved to the team, at that point, do you recall what version of Visual Studio you were guys building at that moment?
Yeah, we just shipped when I started in 2010. We just shipped Visual Studio 2010. So the first release I was credited on was Visual Studio 2010 Service Pack 1.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, I will share a little bit of my story. I started developing in the 2000s. At that time, everything was, Solarix. So we were doing C++, using Solarix, compiling in terminal. And then all of a sudden, it's something similar like you, right? All of a sudden, I start seeing some type of .NET. But at that moment, I think 1 or 2 years after that, Microsoft launched a Microsoft lab inside the university, and I started working for it. So that's where then I started getting exposed of, all things, books, framework and all that stuff, right? Going to conferences about .NET. And that made me very, very curious, because then I started seeing, the first version of Visual Studio back then. I think it was 2002. I think it was the first one. And .NET Framework 1.2, I think it was, or something like that. And then from there, pretty much everything started, it was a change for me, from coming from terminal to now experiencing a UI, a GUI. It was, a very big difference. In 2004, then I got my first, I would say, job, and it was writing, Visual Basic. And that company was using Visual Basic C or VB6. At the same time, I was going through college, and then we get into the VB.NET. So cool thing, it was like I was already doing a bunch of other things, outside at the work site, and then coming back to college, and it was I would say easy in that aspect for me. But then I started migrating things from VB6 to VB.NET, and you keep going, right? I think I've used almost every Visual Studio release that would be out there. 2002, 2006, 8, 12, up to nowadays. In 2004, that was where I then started using C#. That's when I moved to C#, because I started seeing almost the same, right? All the code and examples and things that I'm seeing is C#, right? So I was like, okay, I cannot translate things anymore, right? And this is back in the day. Like there was not a lot of I would say the resources that we see nowadays, and the sharing and all that thing. It was a little bit more difficult to find, right? If you don't find it, you have to make it. so it was a fun experience there. But since then, of course, since the beginning, Visual Studio have transformed my development career forever, and I've been using it, since the 2000s, right? For that, before we get to the next, I just want to share a couple of items with everyone, right? This is the first starter pack of Java, because at college they started, sharing. They were opening a class of Java, and they told me, hey, you can either use Java, or you can go through, to .NET. And I was like, no, I don't like Java. I'm gonna go to the .NET side of the house. These are some of my first, I would say, Visual Basics 6 MSDN library, right? This is absolutely things that I cherish from the time. This one was a big one. This was a big conference that Microsoft did in Puerto Rico called Heroes. I don't know if you recall that, but
I don't.
They did this, and they share, Visual Studio 2008 Standard Edition. It has Windows servers and SQL Server. Back in the day, it was, client server applications. Very straightforward. Love that. Do you have some of your side that you can share with us?
Yeah, I brought some stuff here too. I brought. It's hard to see, I guess. But it's the first code I ever committed into the Visual Studio code base. I took a printout. So this is, I think at the time back then we used TeamCity maybe internally for building at least the web tooling. So here this is me posting some updates to the HTML schemas or something.
Nice.
And then I have another one. So the other one here that's the first time I broke the build. I thought that was the coolest. I still do. I broke the Visual Studio build. I'm like, that's awesome. So I printed these out and I framed them and I've had them on my wall for 15 years.
Wow.
Here we are.
That's amazing. Well,
yeah.
We share a little bit of our story. I think from your perspective, how do you see the impact that Visual Studio have done for developers across the globe?
It's hard to even quantify the impact, I think, because just the millions of users over so many years, decades of Visual Studio, it's hard to say on a personal level, but I can maybe, and you might recognize this, and I've heard this from others as well, but I definitely felt it myself. There was a moment in time, I remember it very clearly, when I realized I could code anything. I might not know how to do it, but I knew I could learn it, and therefore the door was open. I knew I could. It didn't matter. You had a problem, I could solve it with code, right? And there was like a light switch that turned on. And so Visual Studio was this thing that helped me make that true. So it was always there. It was always with me, whether I want to do web or if I want to do, .NET Compact Framework. I even built a Compact Framework app for a Windows Mobile, not Windows Phone, Windows Mobile. So way back when, in 2003.
I still have my PDA, my Compact.
There you go. You have your Pocket PC.
Yes.
Pocket PC edition,
exactly.
So that feeling of empowerment and creativity and support that Visual Studio gave me, like it was like it gave me superpowers. It made everything possible, and it's been doing that for 25 years now. And I have, to this day, I still have that feeling that no matter what, Visual Studio is my home. Yep. I go in there and the world is open. I can do whatever I want, and anything I can dream of up here.
Yes.
Can channel through my fingers to the keyboard, and Visual Studio is going to make it real. And so I think the impact there on a personal level has been an excitement, an empowerment, an inspiration, something that I carried with me for all these years. And I'm deeply grateful. I'm deeply grateful for having such a tool be on my side with me for that long, and just that trust. And it's almost like, it's hard to say. So I used to call it when I got hired by Microsoft to work on Visual Studio, I used to describe it as, because I didn't have better words for it, like it's almost like this romantic kind of thing where you've been using something for so long that you love, and you now get to improve it and make it yours the way you think the tool should be. And that relationship is like, I think a lot of people share to various degrees, right? And so I think the impact on a personal level, people have been betting their careers on .NET and C++ and with Visual Studio for so many decades. It's a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And just, thinking about it, right? So it has done that for you. The same thing for me. And if you can times that, 100 million times probably across the globe, people developing, tools, application for critical applications, for hospitals, for, you name it, solving problems out there. So that's the impact, that we can see, coming, into reality, right? So absolutely, I love it. Let's jump to actually, this new release that is coming out. Please share what are your thoughts, if there are any features that you want to highlight today, anything on that aspect.
So Visual Studio 2026, it's finally out. It's taken us a while, right? The last major version of Visual Studio was 22.
22, yeah.
And it was released in November of 2021. So 4 years ago. And so this is a long time in the making, and it's fantastic to see finally come alive. And we're very excited on the team. Everybody's super excited. This is probably the release I've been part of where the excitement level is the highest I think it's ever been internally. And it's also, I think, the release we've had. So we've already let MVPs such as yourself and others get early access to the bits. And so you've been playing around with this stuff for like at least a month.
Yes.
And the the feedback we've gotten from the MVPs have been overwhelmingly positive. I don't remember I've ever seen such a positive, like there's hardly anything negative at all. Like it's all like very positive, and it's in particular in two main areas. One is the new fluent UI design language that's implemented everywhere. So we've been able to remove a bunch of the old stuff that, wasn't themable, like the old tools options dialog, for instance, is now this beautiful thing that, is full screen and looks great, WPF, modern, crisp lines everywhere, new icons that are just gorgeous. It feels modern, it feels sleek, it feels intentional. It's just a fantastic feeling. So we get so much good feedback from that. Like every day it keeps coming in. This looks so good, And secondarily, performance. So, we always hear from people, hey, performance of Visual Studio, it's old, it's clunky, it's slow, whatever. And that's true. And it's true for a lot of people. Some people don't see those issues. It completely depends on what type of solution you're working on, how many projects you've got. Is it a mix of C++ and .NET and web and .NET Framework and .NET Core? And everyone's solution is different, so everyone's experience is different. That's kind of just the nature of Visual Studio. And so for some people, it's been kind of slow. So this time around, we've been able to really do some architectural changes that speeds things up significantly. And so you're seeing two things. You're seeing things load faster. You're seeing things build faster, like F5 scenarios are faster because the build is faster. And so you hit your breakpoint faster. And then you also see a much more responsive UI. So you're not going to see as many small freezes of like half a second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, sometimes longer, depending on the action you're taking. But Visual Studio now remains interactive through the whole thing and no longer freezes or hangs, as we call it. So the hang rate is significantly reduced. And if you take that, the performance gains, plus the new modern UI, you're left with like this modern, lightweight feeling in Visual Studio. And I think that's the first thing people are going to notice when they boot 2026 up for the first time. They're going to be, wow, this is a whole new thing, and it feels so much better. That's what we keep hearing from everybody. So
Awesome. Yeah.
I don't remember ever having heard something like this before, like this positive thing so early.
No, I would say, I would jump there. I want to go back a little bit. I remember, I think when Entity Framework started, I know I had a problem. That's I would say the only major problem that I've gotten with Visual Studio, when I think it was migrating. I think I created an application, first time, and then created Entity Framework. It will create a file, and then something happened that it crashed, and then I could not recuperate that. That was in, I don't know, 2000 and probably 4 or 3. But I agree with you. I've been playing with it now in this latest release. It's been incredible, fast, as you say, sleek. The one feature I would say that I currently was able to get into organically. Yeah, I was not looking into it. I was just, going through, code and checking things out. Was I think it was called performance agent. Profiler agent, man. That was amazing. I was like, all of a sudden I'm looking for, okay, I need to optimize this and make it a little bit faster, but then I need to know, I do some benchmarks or know where to work around it. So then all of a sudden I'm here, looking at, I think it was the chat Copilot, and then I start typing something, and then all of a sudden Profiler agent starts doing that for me. And I was like, this is really nice. I was wishing that happened, in the 2000s, but no, that was great. That was great.
Yeah. So that's the third thing that we're doing here in this one. So talk about the two first ones. The third thing is AI. AI is here to stay, and it's our responsibility to implement it in a way that is not in your way, where you can dial it back. You can have more of it, you can have less of it, depending on how you want to use it. But one thing is for sure, it's not going anywhere. And we are building it deeper into Visual Studio. And so all the different corners of the IDE, that's really the cool thing about an IDE, is that it knows everything about your situation. It knows about your unit testing and your profiling and your debugging and your issue tracker and your source control and your databases and your Azure deployment environments and your yada, 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 right?
Yep.
All of it. And so the more the AI knows, the better it can be at doing things for you or with you, improving the situation, increasing performance, and all these things. So that's what we're building in, and it's like a foundational work, a platform update, if you will, that we can build these more richer experiences on top of as we go along in the future. Like
Awesome.
it's a future proofing thing, if you will. But we did build one feature on top of it, and that is the profiler agent. And so you'll see that here in the insiders build in the first releases here. And that is this amazing thing. And the reason I think it's so amazing, and your reaction to it kind of proves it almost, is the profiling is really hard. We know not a lot of people use the profiler in Visual Studio to find bottlenecks and memory leaks and so on. And even if you do, if you run it and you figure out, oh, this method is expensive to call, or this line of code is expensive, or allocates too much memory, what are you going to do with that information? How are you going to fix that? Do you know how to do that in the best possible way? What if the best possible way has to do with like unsafe C#? Like me personally, I have never used unsafe C#. I don't kind of want to. I don't know what it is. I feel like I'm doing something illegal if I do it.
Yeah.
So I don't understand it. And so I would never suggest something like that, for instance. But it also means that I'm not learning stuff, right? So that there's a downside to that, of course. Now, with the profiler agent, it kind of democratizes these things. It makes it so that this very hard thing to do, like profiling and fixing performance issues, becomes a very simple thing to do, and one that teaches you about the performance enhancements that it's suggesting, so that you can do it yourself the next time. So you know that, oh yeah, the hash set in this situation is the better data structure than the dictionary for this particular thing. It is going to be faster, let's say, as an example, right? So what's really cool is that the profiler agent does add benchmarks in order for it to figure out scientifically, not just guessing, but scientifically, that the suggestions for fixing performance issues is actually better than what it used to be, than what it was before, is that it will add the benchmarks, benchmark.net, and it can run them. It will make the changes and it will run them again and see what the benefits were. And so it's a highly scientific thing. And you can even come in and say, hey, I don't like your suggestion. So it will give you a list of things that it will want to do, right? And you can tell it to go ahead, or you can say, hey, don't do that unsafe C# because I don't understand it. I don't like that. Can you come up with a different idea? And you should just type that in. Do something else that is also better for performance. And so it will give you a different solution. It might not be as good, but it's still better than what was before. And then you just let it go and poof, it does everything. And so the way I like to talk about it is like this profiler thing and performance optimization. For a lot of people, that was a door that was closed. Because if you don't know how to do this, you don't know. You have to learn it. And do you have time for that? And so on and so forth. So the door was closed. And the AI is able to open that door. So now the impossible becomes possible. But it also doesn't walk through that door on its own. It takes you with it. You learn as you go along. You know this. So next time you're going to write better, more optimized code. And I think that is the two aspects of AI that are really amazing, is that makes the impossible possible, and it makes you a better developer. And that's the stuff that we're going to be leaning into heavily. And that's what this update, the foundational platform update, allows us to do going forward.
Awesome. I was gonna ask or lean into that a little bit, to talk about any, I would say, future roadmap or things that you can share today. I know you kind of like hint a little bit about it, right? More integration with AI and help all developers to learn, write better code, and all of those aspects. But is there anything that you want to highlight on a future roadmap for Visual Studio? What should we expect or not, or things on that matter?
Yeah, great question. We don't typically share roadmaps in terms of like in our release schedule, like what
Yeah.
features do we see being released on certain dates or whatever. So it depends on what you mean by roadmap. I mean, outcome-based roadmap, we do have one of those, but that's not really specific to what features are coming. Whether we're going to do that going forward, I don't know, but we do it for Copilot features. So if you're interested in seeing what's coming next for AI, we released the roadmap at the end of August. I think we'll release one again in September. So you're going to see more of those, and those are on our blog. We're shifting to monthly release cadences.
Okay.
So we used to ship every quarter, and we changed that. So we now do it every month. So you're going to see a lot features coming in a lot faster than you're used to. And that's kind of exciting. So, the speed of the world is increasing, and, Visual Studio is keeping up. So we're very pleased with that. That took quite the effort, and now we're here. We're also renaming the preview to insiders. So and that has to do with the monthly. The insiders is more of a fluent thing where a preview is kind of like a moment in time where you say, okay, I'm on preview 1, I'm on preview 2, and then the GA version comes out after that, let's say. Insiders is more fluent, and it allows us the flexibility to update it more frequent as well. So if you're interested in being on the cutting edge and on the preview, if you're on the preview channel today, get on the 2026 insiders, which you probably are, because right now that's the only one we've published. We don't have the stable version yet, the GA of 2026. It's coming soon, but as of now, we're doing the insiders. But it allows us to update it at any point in time we'd like. Hopefully, it's going to be more often than you're used to, which is great. So we have a much tighter feedback loop, and you get cool features to play with sooner. Win-win.
Awesome. No, that's great. I understand where you're coming from. From my side, I would say looking at different things, videos and YouTube videos where you spoke about in BS Live. I saw how many I would say bugs or issues the whole team have solved, and it's even faster. I think that proved that AI is a big part of everyone, not only for our end users, but also for the internal team, right? How it's solving things out. So I expect that, being even explored and expanded a little bit more inside Visual Studio. And I'm talking about, if you could say a wish list, right? I'll say, thinking about agents and how multi-agents will work inside Visual Studio, right? But different things. We start seeing it with the profiler agent, but I'm expecting, more of that. One big one, I think, since I work with, in the past, very, very secure applications in that realm is, an agent that it's analyzing your code for security, in security side, right? So SQL injections, all of those things aspect on that will be amazing.
Yeah, there's so many options here, and so the possibilities are really endless. And so it's an exciting time that we're moving toward here. And it's exciting now, and we see these things come live on a weekly basis. It's so fast. It's kind of astonishing.
Awesome. Well, Mats, thank you so much, for taking time with me today. Is there anything that you wanna, tell us before we go? Anything there you wanna speak about?
I want to encourage everybody to go try it out. Go to visualstudio.com and click the download link, and then get the insiders of Visual Studio 2026. I think you won't be disappointed. I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised. And that includes if you're using Visual Studio 2022 today, or you haven't used Visual Studio for a while because of reasons, but you remember it as being maybe slow or something like that. Give it a second try, because this is not just any other update. It's a very, very significant one.
Awesome. Thank you, Mats. Well, everyone, thank you for joining today. Thank you for taking your time and watching this video, and hopefully we'll see you next time.